Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Attracting and Retaining International Nurses. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. So thank you for joining us on our webinar. We have a jam-packed session this afternoon and an excellent panel of experts, so we'll get straight into it. As you're all aware, we're currently facing many nursing workforce pressures at present. Health and age demand is outpacing workforce growth within nursing among Australia's largest and fastest growing needs, and the leading occupation in most recent skill visa grants. Back in my day, before I became a registered migration agent, I worked at a hospital for 6 years in an administrative capacity, and then moved into recruitment of international nurses for a period of 2 years before I fell into migration. And it just seems to me over the last 25 years that this continues to be a major demand and pressure on the industry. So some of the stats that we're seeing at the moment, there's a nurse shortfall of more than 70,000 by 2035. We have immediate pressure in aged care of a 35,000 shortfall annually. Sorry, I should have moved the slides as well. Along with our aging population of 65 plus is set to double by 2050, intensifying our care needs. Jobs and Skills Australia has outlined continuing shortages concentrated in major care professions and in regional Australia. Registered nurses are the top 15 nominated occupations in 24-25, and around 1 in 4 nurses are considering leaving the profession within the next few years due to pressures of the role. And I've just been advised that you can see my notes and not the actual slides, so I'm going to have a little play with that. I knew that would happen, putting me in charge of the PowerPoint slides, so just bear with me a moment. Are my team seeing the full slides, or are we seeing my
Got the notes as well, Sarah.
Okay. Does anyone know how we change that? Apologies, everybody on the line. I was hoping it would just go to the actual slides. Oh, here we go. How's that? Panel?
Yeah, and if you just go into full view, Sarah, I think that will fix it.
Yep. It's coming up here on my other screen. Not doing anything. All right, I might just continue on so we're not delaying the process. So these workforce numbers paint a very clear picture. Demand is rising faster than our nursing workforce can grow, and international recruitment is already happening at scale. So to take us into the how today, we have Alice Chen, senior lawyer at Mapien Law. She'll walk us through the key migration pathways supporting the sector. We also have Anna Bennett, MD and lead recruiter for Nursey Care Recruitment, will take us through the key considerations when hiring nurses from overseas, including the practical considerations around pathways, skills, and timing. And then we have Jamie Patterson, our head of workforce strategy at Mapien, who will walk you through getting your employment right for employees on visas, focusing on compliance and retention. And I, your host, who's clearly miserably failing right now at navigating the slides, will wrap up the session talking about migrant workforce strategies and best practice considerations along with our Q&A. I'm a much better migration agent than I am at driving slides, clearly. We will have time for Q&A at the end, so please place your questions in the Q&A chat, not the normal general chat, and we'll ask them at the end of the panel discussion. We'll also have a few polling questions throughout the presentation. We will share the slides after the session if anyone's interested in those, and there will be a recording of the session shared if you wish to have that too. So I am going to try again and see. I will hand over to Alice, so she can start taking you through the migration pathways.
Great, thanks Sarah. Hi everyone. Apologies for the tech glitch, but you will get the slides, so you'll be able to see the details after the session. So it's great to be with you today, and I'm excited to be taking you through the migration pathways that can help your organisation attract and retain international talent, particularly our critically important registered nurses. I've been practicing immigration for nearly 20 years, and I can honestly say that working with the healthcare and aged care sectors is one of the most rewarding parts of the work. The commitment, the impact on communities, and the clear purpose behind care that you deliver makes it a privilege to support you in building and sustaining your workforce. So in this section, I will give you a practical overview of the visa options available to health and aged care employers. Some of you will already be familiar with the parts of some of these programs. Others may be exploring these options for the first time. So my aim is simple, to give you a clear understanding of the main pathways so you can quickly sense which ones best support your workforce needs. If you'd like a deeper dive after the session, please reach out. We'll be more than happy to talk through your specific scenarios. So before we dive right in, let's open with our first polling question. So hopefully we can pop up the polling function in Zoom. Here we go. It's popped up on your screen, hopefully. And while we're waiting for the responses to come in, I will just walk through these visa programs. So have you used or hired migrant workers through any of the following visa programs? Select all that apply. So the employer-sponsored visas include the subclass 482, the 494, and the permanent visa, the 186. These are commonly used for sponsoring nurses and skilled health professionals. The DARMA program, these are regional specific agreements that offer special concessions to help employers attract and retain skilled migrants who might not meet the standard criteria. The AHPRA, the Aged Care Industry Labour Agreement, this is a dedicated pathway just for aged care providers, including residential care and home care support. Allowing sponsorship of direct care workers across 3 key care occupations. The PALM scheme, this program supports employers, particularly in regional areas, to hire workers from Pacific countries, the Timor-Leste, for essential unskilled or semi-skilled roles. This has become particularly important to support the aged care sector. Other visas that you might come across would be independent visas. These include a range of temporary, permanent visas that have work rights. So it means you can hire them without having to sponsor them. So hopefully we can see some of the results come in. I can't see it on my side. I trust there's a mix of experiences here from the attendees.
Yeah, we have a lot of employer sponsored, a couple of people who've dealt with DAMAs, one with the AHPRA, a couple for the PALM. So good mix, independent, aged care, other programs, and there's one person who's never dealt with any of the programs.
Well, that's great to see that we do have a mix of experiences here. So it's great that some of you have experiences, fantastic. If not, we'll certainly talk through some of the key considerations so you can move forward confidently today. Great, I can see the results. Thank you. And next, so let's get right in. So at a very high level, first up is the employer-sponsored visas. This is the most commonly used pathway for sponsoring nurses, skilled health professionals. In simple terms, these visas allow you to bring in skilled workers when suitable local candidates are unavailable, provided that you meet sponsorship and nomination requirements. So to use them, your organisation needs to become a standard business sponsor, commonly known as the SBS. Once approved, you can access the subclass 482 skills in demand visa for bringing the skilled employees to address your immediate needs. Or you can use the subclass 494, the skilled employer sponsored regional, which is similar in purpose, but tied to designated regional areas. Both visas give you a pathway to permanent residence, which is shown on this slide. It gives you a simple visa flow diagram to see how the visas transition from temporary residence to permanent residence. Again, at a high level, if you sponsor a candidate on a 482 visa, they can typically transition to permanent residence after 2 years of working full-time in Australia on the sponsored visa in the sponsored role. And they would be eligible for the permanent residence 186 temporary residence transition stream. If you sponsor the candidate for a subclass 494, the candidate would typically be eligible for permanent residence after 3 years under the subclass 191 pathway, provided that the role is based in regional, they lived in regional location, and the benefit of this 494 to the 191 pathway is that the employer sponsorship is not required in that final stage, that PR step. Some candidates might also be eligible for the direct permanent residence pathway under the 186 direct entry stream if they hold a skills assessment and also have at least 3 years of relevant work experience. This is quite easily accessible to registered nurses because once they have the AHPRA registration, they can usually obtain the migration skills assessment for migration purposes and accessing that pathway quite easily. So on this slide, I know it might be difficult to see the details, but the table is really a takeaway for you to have a look through and compare the different features, the benefits and the requirements across the visa options. Just a quick tip in terms of deciding which visa pathway may be applicable. It really comes down to where the role is located, whether it's metro, regional, designated regional, to access some of the regional visa pathways. And also, how quickly would you want the person to start to be onboarded and start with the right visa, because processing time can vary quite a bit. And also whether the candidate intends to settle regionally, because that will be a big factor in terms of attracting and retaining the candidate in the right location for you. So again, you'll have this table to have a look at your own time, so I won't go through line by line. Then next up is the DARMA. So the DARMA stands for the Designated Area Migration Agreement. It's a regional specific or region specific agreement that gives eligible employers concessions so they can attract and retain skilled migrants who don't neatly fit the standard requirements. For healthcare, I guess nursing, aged care employers, the DARMA can provide higher age settings for permanent residents, and it's helpful for candidates that are over 45. And it's also helpful for candidates or that the location, the salary concession is needed because regional areas where the salary might be lower than the standard threshold. So the trade, unfortunately, the trade-off of accessing the DARMA is that it does involve a few more steps than the standard sponsorship. It does involve obtaining an endorsement with the designated area representative body first, which is the body that manages the local DARMA program, then followed by requesting a labour agreement with the Department of Home Affairs. And once you have the actual DARMA labour agreement in effect for your organisation, you can use the agreement, much like the standard sponsorship, to lodge the associated visa, whether it's a 482 or the 494 applications for the candidate. So yes, it is more work up front, but in the right scenario, the DARMA concessions can be the difference of an unfilled role or in terms of a longer term hire in a critical regional location. So the visa flow for the DARMA program is very similar to the standard temporary to PR pathways. The only difference is certain DARMA programs does offer a direct PR pathway, provided that the candidate has lived and worked in the nominated occupation in that region. So it's all very region specific, and each Dharma have their own terms and quite specific concessions. So it's always best to look at it each on a case by case basis, reach out if you have scenarios that you want to talk through, then we can walk you through the details. So the next table here is to just show that there are the various concessions available across the Dharma program, such as age, which I mentioned, the salary concessions, but they are, again, very specific to each region agreements, and also specific occupations, whether certain concessions are available. So it's very nuanced, so please do reach out if you have questions, then we can help you through that. So the next few slides relates to the RAKILA, the Aged Care Industry Labour Agreement, and also the PALM scheme. These programs are very exclusive to aged care providers. So I won't spend too much time talking through the following slides, but I will just mention that for aged care providers on this call, listening to the webinar, just be aware that while you might want to access the program, or you have already accessed the program, or curious about the program, the overall process for these RAKILA and the PALM scheme may seem onerous up front, but much like the Dharma, involving quite a few steps, a lot of aged care providers actively use these pathways to build a sustainable direct care workforce. So I will leave these following slides for aged care providers to look through in your own time, because I do want to reserve the time to allow Anna to take you through the recruitment considerations for hiring international nurses, because that is the focus of today's session. So please reach out if you are an aged care provider and want more details on sections that I haven't talked through. But to wrap up my section, I just want to quickly highlight that as an employer, you're likely to come across lots of different types of independent visas. And on this slide just gives you a snapshot of some of the temporary visas that you will see that often carry work rights, but with some limitations. So which is good. It can open up faster hiring of these candidates without having to sponsor them, less complexity and costs involved. But be mindful that you always need to be really diligent in hiring visa holders, especially if they are on a temporary visa. Always check the visa type they hold, the validity, the conditions attached, any work limitations or restrictions in terms of hours of work, location of work, those type of things. And also building a Vivo check process in your recruitment and onboarding to make sure that you document the visa details for your HR file. And especially for the bridging visa holders, we recommend to have a sensible check-in process to make sure the visa status remain valid, no change in circumstances that need to be aware of, and also building a process to have your employees or visa holders to notify you of any change in circumstances that may impact their work rights or visa status. So the final slide is just to flag the permanent residence visas that you might come across. And this again is for your future reference. So by doing all of these things really prevents these last minute the visa expiring tomorrow surprises, and also protects the organisation from inadvertent non-compliance. So with that, I will hand over to Anna to talk you through recruitment of international nurses, the AHPRA registration process, including some practical tips on timelines and documentation.
Great. Thanks, Alice. And thank you everyone for joining us today. For many overseas nurses, coming to Australia isn't a quick move. It's a life decision. They invest time, savings, and months of preparation because they believe this pathway will create a better future for their families. When they feel supported from day one, they don't just stay, they settle in, grow in confidence, and become trusted long-term team members. Next, please. That commitment is exactly why the AHPRA registration process matters. It's how Australia ensures that overseas nurses entering the workforce are safe, qualified, and ready to practice. AHPRA processes nursing registration, applications, and keeps the public register of health practitioners. For nurses and midwives, registration decisions are made by the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Australia in line with national standards. Next. The first step before an overseas qualified nurse applies for registration is self-check. It can't be completed by a third party or an agent. The nurse must do it themselves. AHPRA assesses whether the nurse is safe and eligible to practice in Australia. They review qualifications, registration history, clinical experience, and English proficiency. Now, AHPRA registration falls into 3 streams. Stream A is a fast-track option for nurses from NMBA recognized comparable countries. On Stream B, this is the outcome-based assessment pathway. This is where most of the nurses sit the NCLEX and the OSCE after their initial assessment. And with Stream C, this is for nurses who need to upgrade their qualifications or pursue further study before they can be registered. Stream A is the AHPRA assessment pathway for overseas qualified nurses whose education and registration come from the MBA-approved comparable countries. Next slide. So these are the countries have similar regulatory approaches, education, and registration standards and processes for the registration of overseas qualified nurses in Australia. So this is Ireland, the UK, Spain, Singapore, United States, and in Canada, the provinces of British Columbia and Ontario. Last year, in April 2025, the NMBA introduced the streamlined pathway registration standard following the Robin Cook review. It's designed to fast-track overseas qualified nurses who are already registered and practicing in NMBA-approved countries with comparable jurisdictions. The new process offers 2 streamlined pathways. So in pathway 1, the nurses gain their nursing degree in comparable jurisdiction. And then they gain their registration. They have at least 1,800 hours of experience since 1st of January in 2017. In pathway 2, I can give you an example. So let's take Nurse Maria as an example. So Maria completed her bachelor's degree of nursing in the Philippines and became an RN. She then moved to the United Kingdom, gained registration, and has been practicing as an RN. Under the pathway 2, one of the requirements is that the nurse has been registered and practicing in a comparable country since 2017 and has completed 1,800 hours of practice in that country. So Maria has worked full-time in the UK for 3 years, well exceeding 1,800 hours of practice. because she's currently registered and has recent practice in the UK, she may be eligible to apply under the streamlined pathway. The key difference between the pathway 1 and 2 is where the qualification originally comes from. So since this streamlined pathway, it would take only for about 3 to 6 months to process, depending on documentation and assessment timelines. And of course, nurse must still meet all the core registration standards of Australia, which is the to meet the English language requirement, clear from criminal history, recency of practice, and keep the indemnity insurance. Now, for Stream B, also known as the outcome-based assessment pathway, this applies to overseas qualified nurses from countries that are not classified as NMBA-approved comparable countries. So this includes nurses trained in countries such as Philippines, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and many others. Under this pathway, nurses must demonstrate equivalence to Australian standards through an assessment process before they can be registered. So the nurse needs to take the NCLEX exam, or that's the multiple choice questions, and it's delivered worldwide. So nurses from any other countries, they can just sit on this exam in their own country. Now, after passing the NCLEX, which is the final stage, the OSCE, this is a practical exam that the nurses will be assessed with their clinical decision-making and safe practice in Australian context. So the nurses needs to come here in Australia, and there are only 2 test centers, one in Adelaide and one in Melbourne. AHPRA registration requires applicants to meet English language standards, which are assessed through approved tests such as the IELTS, OET, and PTE academic. So just recently, they lowered the writing minimum score. It used to be like all band of 7, and now they lowered their requirement for writing to 6.5 for IELTS and C+ for OET, and 56 for the PTE academic. And they're given the chance to resit within 12 months with no score below like 56 for the PTE, C+ for the OET, and 6.5 for the IELTS. So nurses must meet the minimum score requirement. And the validity of the English exam is 2 years. Now, once an applicant has completed the required stages, they can now lodge their formal application. And all documents must be provided in English. So if any documents are in other language, the applicant must provide a certified English translation. Next, please. Sorry, I just with the slides. I don't know what's happening with the slides, but yeah, so just mentioning with the OBA timeline, it depends on completing and submitting all required documents, meeting the English requirement, and passing the NCLEX and OSCE exam. Typically, it's about 6 months. No, sorry, 9 months to process the AHPRA registration. Next. Now, what are the common causes of delays? So, missing or incorrect documentations. So, name mismatches or dates. So, like for example, in one document, the name Maria, it's spelled out as Maria. And some documents, it's only written as MA. So we need to fix those mismatch of the names before lodging your AHPRA applications. Now, in one of the common cause of delays is delayed response from the nursing board regulators and passing the NCLEX, English, and OSCE exam. And us, yeah, okay. Now we get a polling question. So yeah, we would like to hear from you guys. So when hiring overseas RNs for permanent roles, what is your biggest concern? Is it cost per hire, commitment, skills, onboarding time, and supervision?
Okay, so we're having some answers coming through. So far, it's a mix. We've got cost per hire, commitment, onboarding time. No one's ticked skills yet. So yeah, so we have onboarding time and supervision, and the commitment seem to be the two most prevalent ones right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, commitment. Yeah, that's number one factor. I think
Yeah.
that's what I mostly heard from the employers.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we've had one respondent on the cost per hire, two for commitment, zero for skills, and two people have responded onboarding time and supervision.
great, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's the results there. Stop sharing that, go back to the slides. There we go.
Yeah, so now I'll share some key challenges and what slows the pipeline. Now, AHPRA application for overseas nurses is a long process and high effort, especially for the Stream B pathway. And upfront cost, preparing for their documents, taking the exams are high, especially for those from lower income countries. And even after gaining registration, the pathway to get working visa remains complex. And they have limited opportunities to gain local work experience. Yeah, next. Now, relocation often brings common challenges, but there are practical ways to make the process easier. Here are the challenges we commonly encounter and the practical steps we take to address them. So I would suggest we support nurses to succeed by preparing them from the reality of move before they arrive, not once they already started. That means having honest, practical conversations early about day-to-day life in the community. We'll talk about their available accommodation if the employer is willing to provide accommodation, means of transport, available schools, if they got kids, needs to be sent to the primary or secondary school. Is there available childcare, shopping? How far is the shopping or the grocery from where they're staying, and the local supports available. And it's a fact that most of the nurses don't drive. So we strongly encourage them to start learning to drive while they're still overseas because it makes settling in so much easier, especially in the regional areas. And if they're coming with their family, we'll also talk through timing. In many cases, it can be better for the nurse to arrive first, settle into the job and community for a few months, and bring the family once they things feel settled and familiar. So we also include the spouse or the partner in the planning too. So exploring what work options that they may be available when they arrive, whether they might need extra training or short courses to be job ready. So it's not just we'll sponsor you and how it works. It's a shared preparation, clear expectations, and practical planning from both sides. So the move is sustainable and the nurse can truly stay long term. Now, once you offered the nurse a role, so they would be, excited and quickly say yes. On paper, it makes sense. They're qualified, experienced in acute care, and very grateful for the opportunity. But saying yes and being ready for that specific setting are two different things. Many overseas nurses come from cultures where formal aged care or community care settings are not widely practiced. In many cases, care for the older people is provided within the family. So their professional experience is often primarily hospital-based. So stepping into a different healthcare setting, especially in the regional area, can feel very different from what they imagined. Some may say they're open to regional work, but their long-term goal is to live in a metro area or return to a hospital environment. When reality sets in, different pace, different responsibilities, different lifestyle, they may start looking elsewhere. It's rarely about competence. It's about alignment. That's why we need deeper conversations. We explore their long-term goals, preferred settings, lifestyle expectations, and genuine interest in the role. We need to assess commitment, not just availability, because retention doesn't begin after arrival. It begins with an honest and informed yes from the start. What we consistently see in the first few weeks during the onboarding, it's not lack of skill, but transition pressure. Nurses are absorbing a lot very quickly. New systems, new processes, new expectations. When support is inconsistent, confidence begins to drop. Nurses may hesitate to ask questions, adjust to different communication styles, and juggle time pressures while still learning the environment. These challenges are common, and when they're anticipated and supported properly, they're also preventable. That's why structured onboarding matters. With consistent support, those first weeks build confidence. Without it, even capable nurses can feel overwhelmed before they had a chance to truly settle. Now, I have here few of the learning providers that offer either free trainings or paid trainings for healthcare workers. Altura Learning, OSMED, ALICE, that's specific for aged care, and the Wicking specifically for aged care as well. That's from the University of Tasmania. Based on my, we keep on that slide. Based on my observation, self-initiated online modules give nurses a valuable head start. They get familiar with the Australian healthcare standards, documentation, systems, and workplace expectations at their own pace while they're still overseas. This way, they do not have to learn everything during busy shifts. When they arrive, they are more prepared, more confident, and safer in their practice. This also makes on-site onboarding smoother and faster. Next, please. So with nursing care, we help nurses succeed. So from the start, we also provide AHPRA registration assistance. Then throughout their journey, we provide them guidance, advice, until they gain their AHPRA registration and they're willing to work in an aged care. We have the Nursing Care Learning Hub. We get a structured online modules for aged care nurses. Next, please.
Sorry, that's just not coming up on the screen. There we go.
Okay, thank you. So as healthcare leaders, you're working hard to build a stable team and protect safe and quality care. Our role at Nursing Care is to support you through the process that reduces risk and improves retention. We start by helping you choose the right team member, nurses who genuinely committed to your setting and ready for the role. We screen and prepare nurses before they reach your interview stage, checking clinical skills, communication, genuine readiness. So you're meeting candidates who are already aligned with your expectations. We can also provide pre-onboarding. Before they start, we require nurses to complete structured e-learning modules to ensure they're familiar with the Australian standards. When needed, we provide coaching to clarify concepts and prepare them for what they're encountered in your setting. So once they arrive in Australia, we help the nurse settle in by arranging airport pickup, taking them to your accommodation, setting up a bank account and SIM card, and ensuring that they have essentials such as groceries and local information. So all in all, when nurses and support workers start with clear expectation and the right support, they settle in faster, feel more confident, and integrate better, giving your team a smoother onboarding and more consistent care from day one. And that leads perfectly into our next session. Our next speaker is Jamie, Head of the Workforce Strategy for the Southern Region. Jamie will take us into the workplace side of this, practical strategies to support attraction and retention. Getting employment right from the start matters, and the legal and contractual considerations providers need to be aware of. So we'll give the floor to Jamie.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As Anna said, I'm going to talk about getting employment right from the start, and let's start with the why. It's not dissimilar to why you want to get it right for your Australian employees. It reduces turnover, it improves retention, enhances team productivity and engagement. It ensures legal compliance and reduces risks to your business. From a psychological health and safety perspective, if you're getting people getting it wrong at the start, or you're getting the wrong people, it's going to have an adverse impact on everyone, the employee and the people leaders. And for visa holders, compliance and correct engagement can result in a long-term committed employment relationship, which is ultimately what you want as employers and what impacts your bottom line. When sourcing those applicants, look, it's really important you understand your visa types and sponsorship obligations. They are different types. They don't all mean the same thing. So it's really important that you do understand those, because ultimately it ensures compliance with the Department of Home Affairs requirements. Anna talked a lot about considering the relocation support and the cultural integration and the importance of that. We work with a lot of employers where we bring people over into Australia, and we meet with those people, and I've met with them with our immigration representatives, and they've been so grateful to us and in the way that we've got them into the country, and the employer has helped assimilate them and their families into Australia, and we've had them hug us and ask for photos, and so when we do that right, you end up with a really, really good relationship. It's important to balance your global talent access with local labour markets. Don't just try to get people from overseas. Depending on who you are as an employer, you might have targets that you need to meet around Indigenous employment, DEI targets, etc. So make sure you consider those in the broader workforce plan. And loyalty from employees who have been provided an opportunity of a lifetime cannot be underestimated. Again, I've met with people we've brought over. They want to get photos with us so that they can show their partners and their kids and say, these are the people who helped us, move here and the life that we're providing to those people. Thanks, Sarah. From a legal and regulatory compliance and contractual arrangements perspective, again, it's important to verify the candidate's right to work in Australia. You're allowed to ask that question as part of your pre-selection, and you have an obligation to employ people only who have that legal right. You need to confirm the relevant qualifications, licenses and accreditations. Again, Anna talked about the different countries that have certification that aligns with ours. There's other countries that have, certain nursing qualifications, but that don't align with ours. So make sure you check those. Although they're a visa holder, they are part of our employment system here, so they fall under the Fair Work Act and the discrimination laws. So it's important to understand that. It's also important to maintain records and understand that you do have obligations from a privacy perspective for those people as well. We'll learn in a moment when we have a look at a piece of case law the importance of developing a contract of employment that addresses the situation and the individual that you are engaging. So I talked earlier about understanding the ins and outs of each person's individual visa. You need to write that into your contract of employment. So it's not a one-size-fits-all for your contracts in a lot of these situations. And importantly, you've got an obligation to monitor your visa requirements, be it hours of work or expiration dates, etc. Thanks, Sarah. All right, let's have a look at a few slips, trips and falls. Thankfully, this employer got it right. This is a case of Musa and Costco. I acknowledge upfront that this is not a nursing employer or an aged care employer. However, it is an employer that was dealing with visa workers. So I think there's a lot of good messages in this for everyone on this call. It's about employer responsibilities for migrant workers engaged under their employment. And it also, very important, highlights the importance of contracts and procedural fairness, and they need to be on point. So what's it all about? You've got Mr. Musa, who was employed by Costco since 2021. He was employed under bridging visa and held various roles within the business. He worked in the warehouse for Costco. He worked outside his visa dates, so his visa had expired. He was dismissed by Costco following the expiration of that visa for breach of contract. And he made a claim for unfair dismissal, alleging that Costco acted prematurely. So a little bit more of the background on it. So Costco conducts regular reviews of visa holders under their employment. They have a system in place where they have the expiry date, so it triggers their business to talk to their visa holders in advance of that and see where they're at and what's happening with it. On the 6th of August last year, in 2024, they identified that Mr. Musa His visa was expiring on the 14th of August. So they approached him and he said that he had applied for a new visa and expects the approval this week. Mr. Musa continued to work on the 15th and 16th of August. Costco questioned his working with the supervisor, emailing and texting him, seeking a copy of his new visa. He provided a copy of the application and a promise to provide it once it came through. Mr. Musa took personal leave on 19-20 of August, and Costco ultimately stood him down and provided him with a show cause letter. He responded requesting more time and highlighting that the government was well aware and was processing his request. However, Costco terminated Mr. Musa's employment, as I said before, for breach of contract on the 30th of August, and ironically, he received his visa on 3rd of September, 3 days later. The opposing arguments here, Mr. Musa said that he had limited impact in the overall situation. He had consulted with Costco throughout the process and kept them informed. The termination process was rushed. The termination should have been done in person, not in writing, and was not provided adequate opportunity to respond to his employer, and the visa approval was pending and likely. So that's what the argument that Mr. Musa ran. The counter argument that Costco ran was the termination was not harsh, unjust, or unreasonable. The employer is liable to understand when employees are able to work in Australia. The employer was not able to anticipate when Mr. Musa would be able to work again, and Mr. Musa knew that his legal right to work had expired and chose to work regardless on those 2 days. What the Commission had to say about this, look, they said that they sided with Costco, and they said there was a valid reason for termination due to the breach of contract and the enterprise agreement, and also they breached the Migration Act 1958. Mr. Musa was aware that his visa was due to expire, but chose to work outside those dates. He was provided the opportunity to respond due to the show cause process that Costco ran. The delay in the new visa was due to Mr. Musa's inaction. Essentially, he should have applied for it sooner. They said the Costco did not act hastily, through the process. And these next 2 points are the main thing that really saved Costco here, and that was their contract of employment. And the clause 8 was very clear. It says you will need to provide evidence of your right to work in Australia. And clause 13 of the contract said if you don't meet the conditions of clauses 5 through to 12 of this letter, the letter being your contract, your employment may be terminated by Costco with immediate effect. So they had some really good wording in their contract that saved them. And ultimately that led to key lessons for employers. There's a couple of visa lessons, contract lessons, and procedural fairness. So from a visa perspective, employers need to seek to understand the employee's rights to work in Australia, and they need to monitor that visa information and the employee's rights to work in Australia. Pending visas are not good enough, or pending visa applications are not good enough. So you need to just be aware of that. And the contract of employment, ensure that contracts of employment have or provide a positive obligation on employees to disclose the visa information. And from a procedural fairness, I can never underestimate this enough. We see it again and again in courts and tribunals that they say there is a valid reason to terminate. However, you didn't follow a procedural fair process. So despite the legal position, always go follow a procedurally fair process. Use a show cause process, give them time to reply, etc. And make sure you pay notice period unless serious misconduct has taken place. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. That's awesome. Thanks, Jamie. All too familiar. This happens quite a bit in our practice, unfortunately, as well. So I'm really glad you shared that with everybody. So I'm driving and talking. It's dangerous. So I'll wrap up with the best practice for your migrant workforce and strategies that you can consider putting in place or reviewing to ensure everything is in check. So we'll look at your policies and procedures. These build really strong foundations through clear processes. So ensure your recruitment and selection frameworks are tailored for not only your Australian, but your migrant workforce and onboarding. Structured onboarding such as cultural orientation, workplace readiness, safety and compliance is really important. As Jamie had mentioned through that case, ongoing compliance with migration, workplace and award obligations. Know what your obligations are as a business sponsor, or if you're hiring anyone through the independent pathway, as Alice mentioned earlier in the piece. Partner with trusted recruiters, migration advisors, and settlement service providers to ensure ethical recruitment and lawful practice. We then go on to look at our retention strategies to keep your workers engaged and supported long term. We suggest you consider clear and transparent pathways to permanent residency, cost sharing models for visas. Not everything has to be borne by you, the sponsor. Some can be borne by the visa applicant themselves. Look at travel settlement costs to support retention and fairness. Professional development, skills recognition and training support. Anna kindly took us through some of the available training. Look at stable rostering, predictable hours, and culturally safe workplaces. And then we have a look at our stakeholder engagement. Look at aligning your workforce strategies with business needs through collaboration. So coordinated engagement across HR, operations, leadership, and external partners. Integrated compliance with people-centered approach to support well-being and organizational risk management. Seek regular feedback from workers, supervisors, and community support organizations. And workforce planning, aligning to service delivery requirements and long-term sustainability. So they're just a little tidbits and best practice that we can help guide you through, and some key considerations to look at building in to your policies and planning. Consistency is key at the end of the day. So that leads us to a thank you and also onto our Q&A. So I'll just have a quick look in the Q&A box to see if we've got any questions. And while we're waiting for those to load, I might throw to the panel. This is my favorite part, put you on the spot. So I might throw this to Jamie. Should employers ask potential employees about their right to work in Australia as part of the recruitment process? And if so, how does this lie with regard to potential discrimination against people? I know you'd mentioned this in one of your previous slides.
Yeah, okay, good question. Yes, they should. They should ask. I recommend having a part of your application process. Have a question in there around, you by ticking this one, you acknowledge that you have the legal right to work in Australia, and you need to provide that evidence. When it comes to discrimination, look, I think you ask every single person who applies, regardless of what nationality they are, where they're from, the same question, which will put you in a good place. And always remember that you're allowed to say no to people if they don't have a visa. You're not saying no to them because of their race, their nationality. You're saying no to them because they don't have the legal right to work in Australia. They don't have a visa. Yes, ask the question, and I don't think you're going to get in too much trouble from a discrimination perspective as long as you apply it evenly. And the reasons for saying no to someone is because they don't have the legal right to work in Australia.
Super, thank you, Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
Another question perhaps for the panel. What advice would you give to employers looking to improve their retention of international staff? Who wants to tackle that one?
I'll jump in. I think in terms of improving retention of international staff, it's not limited to registered nurses. It's really across all sponsored visa holders, even just visa holders generally. I think the message has been loud and clear throughout the webinar. It's all about transparency, honest conversations up front, including visa pathways, understanding the candidate's objectives, short-term, long-term, for their family as well. Then the more holistic wraparound you can provide from an end-to-end perspective, including immigration, I'm sure Anna and Jamie will chip in as well, the more smoother experience you will have as an employer and for the candidate. You'll hear a lot of people talk about candidate care. I think as employers, that is really critical in terms of differentiating yourselves as a good employer and retaining them for the long run.
Wonderful. Anna, Jamie, did you want to?
I totally agree with everything Alice has been said. So yeah.
Awesome, thank
I agree.
you. So I can't see any questions from the audience, which is fine. I've got maybe one more. I'm conscious of time, so I might just maybe Anna, we often speak with nurses already on 482 visa who want to change employers for various reasons. Sometimes because they want to move out from a regional to a metro area, or shift from aged care to a hospital role. What advice would you give employers when a nurse on a sponsored visa wants to leave their current sponsor before completing their contract? That's the first part of the question.
Yeah, Sarah, I want to pass on the answer to Alice
Tell us
because
on that
it's more on
one.
legal, yeah,
Yeah.
legal advice, yeah.
Yeah, I think if it's a sponsored visa holder, like the subclass 482, definitely, as the prospective employer, you need to be aware of the candidate's eligibility, your obligation to sponsor them, make sure you're comfortable with all of that. The individuals in the role will meet the requirements. Typically, you would need to nominate them and apply for the nomination part of the application. You can typically transfer their existing visa across to your sponsorship, but as the existing sponsor, the employer would need to notify the department and also be aware of other sponsorship obligations in terms of record keeping. But maybe Jamie can chip in terms of ending employment compliance as well.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. Look, at the end of the day, I mean, we've had clients say to us, when they're bringing people over, and they said, can we, how do we hold them here? Can we withhold wages? Things like that, and you can't. They say, how do we stop people from moving? And I said, well, you can't. But ultimately, it's the same as your Australian employees. You can't stop them from moving, and your job as an employer, and I know this is easier said than done, is to provide a good employment experience. And the better you treat people, the better you, as Anna has outlined, the better you onboard people and onboard their family into the cultures, our cultures, Australian cultures, the more likely they are to stay. And some places will need more than others. You move someone to Brisbane versus Mackay, it's vastly different. So, just think around that. And the better you onboard people, the better their employment experience will be, the more likely they are to stay with you.
That's great. Thank you, Jamie. So I'm conscious of time. It is 1:02. I know we still have some participants on the line, but I think we'll call it there. I really appreciate the panel and their expert advice taking us through all the intricacies of dealing with migration, registration, and just general employment from a day-to-day perspective as well. As I said earlier, we will share a fact sheet later on today along with our slides. And if anyone has any specific questions in relation to their business that they're in and they want to deep dive further into any areas of recruitment, registration, immigration, or employment, please reach out to us. Our contact details will be on the end of the FAQ. But we really appreciate you joining us today and spending the time with us. I'm sorry my PowerPoint skills have let me down, but I will brush up on those for next time, or maybe pass the buck. But appreciate everyone joining us. Have a great afternoon, and hopefully we'll connect again soon. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.